So last time, we saw Moses being called to ministry. And just like us, when we're called to ministry, he said, right on, Lord, let's go. Right? What was the theme last week? Paul watched us on the web, and he said, I think I got the theme. What was it? Yeah, but. Moses, go. Well, yeah, but. I can't speak well. And he said, who am I that I should go? Or what's your name, God? If I go and talk to them, they're going to want to know who you are. And he said, well, my name is I Am. I think that's a cool name. Well, suppose people won't believe me. Well, see that rod in your hand? Yeah, throw it down. He makes it into a snake. Moses ran from the snake. Well, okay, that's pretty convincing, Lord, but I'm a bad public speaker. Who made your mouth? All right, you've answered all my questions, but couldn't you just send someone else? Doesn't it just sound like a willing, I'm ready to go, Lord, send me. He's resisting. And that gives me hope, because I'm kind of a turkey sometimes when he asks me to do stuff. But God's patient with us. And he didn't force Moses. He convinced Moses, I'm going to be with you. I'm going to give you signs. This is your ministry. And so he finally gave in. And God even said, I'm going to send Aaron, your brother, to help you. And so let's pick it up in chapter 4, verse 18. After this discussion that Moses had with God through the burning bush. So Moses went and returned to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said to him, please let me go and return to my brethren who are in Egypt, and see whether they are still alive. And Jethro said to Moses, go in peace. Now, Moses is 80 years old. But he's respecting his father-in-law. He's living in his father-in-law's camp. He married his wife, Zipporah, and so he's being respectful. And Jethro's saying, yeah, go for it. Obey the Lord. Verse 19, now the Lord said to Moses in Midian, go return to Egypt, for all the men who sought your life are dead. Then Moses took his wife and his sons and set them on a donkey, and he returned to the land of Egypt. And Moses took the rod of God in his hand. And the Lord said to Moses, when you go back to Egypt, see that you do all those wonders before Pharaoh, which I have put in your hand. But I will harden his heart, so that he will not let the people go. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, wait a minute, I want you to remember that. What's going on here? Go and do all these wonders, which I've put in your hand, but what's going to happen? I'm going to harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. I want you to remember that, because as we do the study today, Moses almost seems surprised that Pharaoh's heart is hard and he won't let the people go. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, verse 22, thus says the Lord, Israel is my son, my firstborn. So I say to you, let my son go that he may serve me. But if you refuse to let him go, indeed, I will kill your son, your firstborn. Now, before I talk about killing the firstborn, I want to talk about this hardened heart thing. Because doesn't it seem a little unfair that God would harden Pharaoh's heart? Well, the idea is that God is firming up what's already present there. It's a little bit like when we anybody mixed fiberglass? You've got the resin, maybe you have the fibers in there, you have something there, and then you put in the catalyst, and it reacts and it becomes hard in what it is. And that's what's happening with Pharaoh's heart. And each time we resist God, our heart gets a little harder. You keep rejecting God, you'll find your heart gets hard. It becomes more set into that. Finally, it becomes granite. It's ultimately possible for us to destroy our hearts to where we cannot see God because we've allowed it to get so hard. And so I encourage all of us, when God calls, respond. Yes, Lord. And then in Ezekiel, as he's talking to Israel, who had developed hard hearts, he says, Ezekiel 36, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I will take the heart of stone out of your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. So we have a promise from God. He will soften our hearts if we'll let him. So Pharaoh says, or Moses needs to say to him, let my son go that he may serve me, but if you refuse to let him go, indeed I will kill your son, your firstborn. Now Egyptians prized their firstborn sons. They treated them special. And God's saying to Pharaoh, Israel is my firstborn. Israel's like my son. He's giving him something that Pharaoh can relate to. Need you to let him go. And if you don't, I'm going after your firstborn. He's also foretelling what is ultimately going to happen before Pharaoh will deliver the people. Verse 24. And it came to pass on the way at the encampment. Now that's likely Jethro's camp. So the writer is kind of jumping around. They went to Egypt, but while he was at the camp, this is what happened. That the Lord met him and sought to kill him. I wonder how. How did he seek to kill him? Some think maybe it was by illness. But in any case, it was obvious to those around him that the Lord was going to kill him. And so verse 25, then Zipporah, his wife, took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son and cast it at Moses' feet and said, surely you are a husband of blood to me. So he let him go. He let Moses go. He didn't kill him. Then she said, you are a husband of blood because of the circumcision. Anybody confused? No. Commentators were confused too. We're not quite sure what she's meaning by this husband of blood, but it doesn't sound like a really endearing term, does it? I think she was repulsed by the idea of circumcision. You want to do what to our new baby boy? No way. And apparently Moses yielded to her. We're told in Genesis chapter 17, God is speaking to Abram. This is my covenant or agreement which you shall keep between me and you and your descendants after you. Every male child among you shall be circumcised, and you shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. He who is 8 days old among you shall be circumcised, every male child in your generations. It's not real confusing, is it? We're supposed to do something. Every male child. And that circumcision, you're cutting away the flesh that symbolizes that agreement that I'm living in the spirit with you, Lord. I'm cutting away the flesh. The flesh is dead. I'm alive in the spirit. And so Moses, the deliverer of Israel, apparently had failed to have his boys circumcised. He had two of them, Gershom and Eliezer. We don't know which one we're talking about here. And before Moses could go on with ministry, he had to have true obedience. And so apparently Zipporah finally yielded, all right, and circumcised her boys. Verse 27, and the Lord said to Aaron, go into the wilderness to meet Moses. So he went and met him on the mountain of God and kissed him. So Moses told Aaron all the words of the Lord who had sent him and all the signs which he had commanded him. It seems like as we're going through these verses, we have a lot of time and significant events going on. I mean, Moses goes back to Jethro's camp and almost dies. The boy's circumcised. Then God speaks to Aaron while he's in Egypt, 300 miles away. Hey, Aaron, I want you to travel 300 miles and meet your brother. So he makes the trip. They're back on the mountain again, and Moses is telling him everything that's happened. And then in verse 29 here that we're going to read, then they've made the 300-mile trip back to Egypt. So we have a lot of things occurring in just a couple of verses. So verse 29, then Moses and Aaron went and gathered together all the elders of the children of Israel. They're in Egypt now. Get the leaders together. And Aaron spoke all the words which the Lord had spoken to Moses. Then he did the signs in the sight of the people. Do you remember what they were? The rod turned into a snake. There was a second one. The land turned leprous. The hand turned leprous. That was leprous and hand put together. The hand turned leprous, and then he put it back in, and it came out healthy again. So he did these signs in front of the people. And so the people believed, as God told Moses they would. And when they heard that the Lord had visited the children of Israel and that he had looked on their affliction, they bowed their heads and worshiped. Isn't that a great response? God sees us. We've been crying out to him. Where are you, Lord? Moses comes and says, the Lord has seen you. He sent us. Here's some proof. Here's some signs. And they respond wonderfully. We're going to see a little bit where they lose their faith or their faith wavers. Chapter 5. Now, chapter 5 chapters 5 through 12 contain the detailed interaction between Moses and Pharaoh, including the 10 plagues. We're not going to do all 10 plagues today. In fact, we're going to just do the interaction, the early stuff, and we'll do the plagues next time. But chapter 5, verse 1. Afterward, Moses and Aaron went in and told Pharaoh, "Thus says the Lord God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness." And Pharaoh said, "Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, nor will I let Israel go." So they said, "The God of the Hebrews has met with us. Please let us go 3 days' journey into the desert and sacrifice to the Lord our God, lest he fall upon us with pestilence or with sword." Then the king of Egypt said to them, "Moses and Aaron, why do you take the people from their work? Get back to your labor." And Pharaoh said, "Look, the people of the land are many now, and you make them rest from their labor." Moses only asked for the people to be able to go for a 3-day journey and worship God. Notice the absence of, "and we're going to not come back." But it's a simple and reasonable request. And I like that he includes the fact that the God of the Hebrews has met with us. This is the real God, and he met with us. That gives them credibility. But just as God foretold Moses, Pharaoh's going to resist. He's going to say no. And he reacts 3 ways here in this paragraph. First, he repudiates the God of Israel as having no authority by saying, "Who is the Lord? Why should I obey him? I don't know him." And then second, he's callous to the possibility that the Israelites might suffer harm if they don't go and worship their God. He could care less. And then number 3, the thing he's most concerned with is, this is my labor force. I don't want to lose my laborers. Get back to work. Verse 6, so the same day, Pharaoh commanded the taskmasters of the people and their officers, saying, "You shall no longer give the people straw to make brick as before. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. And you shall lay on them the quota of bricks which they made before. You shall not reduce it, for they are idle. Therefore they cry out, saying, Let us go and sacrifice to our God. Let more be work laid on the men, that they may labor in it. And let them not regard false words." So what's his argument? These guys are idle. Since they're idle, they have time to dream of freedom and going and worshiping their God. I need to make them busier. What a great guy to work for. So he's going to solve the problem, and he creates a way to remove their idle time. We're not going to have Amazon and UPS send them their straw anymore. The Egyptians were bringing it to them. They've got to make their bricks, but they're going to have to go out and get their own transportation system, their own harvesting system, and get their own straw to make the bricks. And if they don't keep up with the same number of bricks, they're in trouble. Now, as I read this, I thought of, I've been to a location where they make bricks by hand. I got to go with some friends, Gerald and Marilee Hagerman from Calvary Chapel, Joshua Springs. They have an orphanage down in Malawi, Africa. And Carmen and I got to go visit us, and they had piles and piles of bricks out there. And, I mean, it was an industry with several kilns to dry the bricks. So we went and looked at how they do it, and you get down in the mud, and you've got to have mud and water, and you mix it up, and then you put it in the mold. And they had these molds, it was like 2 bricks at a time, and they'd clunk, and I'm talking stacks and stacks of thousands of bricks, 2 at a time, and they pull the bricks out, and they're just the dried clay, stack them in a pile so they can dry out, and then later you take those bricks and put them in the kiln and bake them so they become hard, and then you stack them again so for the people to come and get them and take them to the job site. It was quite a project. So think of it. You've got to find a place with mud and water, got to bring some straw to it. The straw, the fibers in there help hold that clay together so it doesn't break apart. You need wood for the big fire you're going to build in the oven. It's quite a process. And so Pharaoh says, keep up with the process, but go get your own straw. And the taskmasters of the people And the officers went out and spoke to the people, saying, Thus says Pharaoh, I will not give you straw. Go get yourselves straw where you can find it, yet none of your work will be reduced. So the people were scattered abroad throughout all the land of Egypt to gather stubble instead of straw. Now, what does that tell us? We've seen the barley fields out here. They cut the barley, and then they come through and they bale the straw, and what's left? Stubble, about that big, right? So apparently they had cut the straw, and these guys are having to go and cut the stubble to get enough straw. So not only do they have to go and get it, they're having trouble finding fields with straw in it, sufficient to do their work. And so verse 13, and the taskmasters forced them to hurry, saying, fulfill your work, your daily quota, as when there was straw. Now understand that these taskmasters, they're the Hebrew foremen, the Hebrew supervisors. These guys know they're in trouble if they don't produce enough bricks. Also, the officers of the children of Israel, whom Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over them, were beaten and were asked, why have you not fulfilled your task in making brick both yesterday and today as before? So these officers who are telling the Hebrews to hurry up, they're getting beaten because they're not meeting the quota. They're in a tough spot. What are they going to do? They can't meet the quota. I'm getting beaten by Pharaoh's guys. It's a conundrum. So they go to Pharaoh. Verse 15. Then the officers of the children of Israel came and cried out to Pharaoh, saying, why are you dealing thus with your servants? There's no straw given to your servants. And they say to us, make brick. And indeed your servants are beaten. But the fault is in your own people. You're not bringing us straw. What can we do? Verse 17, but you are idle. Therefore you say, let us go and sacrifice to the Lord. Therefore go now and work, for no straw shall be given you, yet you shall deliver the quota of bricks. And the officers of the children of Israel saw that they were in trouble, after it was said, you shall not reduce any bricks from your daily quota. How are you going to feel about Moses at this point? You're here to deliver us? And I'm just getting beat up. You made it worse, buddy. So verse 20, as they came out from Pharaoh, they met Moses and Aaron, who stood there to meet them. And they said, let the Lord look on you and judge, because you have made us abhorrent. The word actually is like a foul smell. You've made us abhorrent in the sight of Pharaoh and in the sight of his servants to put a sword in their hands to kill us. Remember, Moses had said, let us go worship our God. Otherwise, God might smite us with the sword. Well, these guys are saying, Moses, Pharaoh's going to smite us with his sword. It's a choice of swords. And they have a point. They are in a tough spot, aren't they? And you know what's interesting is Moses agrees with them. Look at verse 22. So Moses returned to the Lord and said, Lord, why have you brought trouble on this people? Why is it you have sent me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people. Neither have you delivered your people at all. What happened to, I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart. He's not going to let them go. Oh yeah, Lord, I understand. Okay. It's going to be really tough. He's forgetting all of that. Even though God foretold it. So Moses is confused. Have you ever felt like God is asking you to do something and you're confused? Lord, do you see this problem going on? Are you paying attention? I'm pacing the floor. Are you pacing the floor with me? He never paces the floor. If we're confused and it seems like God's not acting to solve the problem, that we know it's a godly situation and God's not solving this problem, which of us are wrong? Us or God? You want to think you need some time? God answers Moses, but he doesn't answer the specific complaints. Chapter 6. Then the Lord said to Moses, now you shall see what I will do. He's saying, I'm going to move now. Now it's time for me to move. Now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh. For with a strong hand he will let them go. He's not going to just say, Okay. No, with a strong hand, he will let them go, and with a strong hand, he will drive them out. Moses, he's eventually going to drive these people out. He's going to want to get rid of them. And God, now I have to focus on names here a little bit, starting with verse 2. And God, the word is Elohim, which is a plural word meaning the true God, the one and only God. So, and Elohim spoke to Moses and said to him, I am the Yehovah. Yehovah is the I am. So, the one and true God spoke to him and said, I am the I am, the one that spoke to you on the mountain. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as God Almighty, El Shaddai. Third name for God, which means the Almighty. But my name, or the Almighty, or provider. He's going to provide deliverance for these people. But my name, the Lord, Jehovah, I was not known to them. I have also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land of their pilgrimage, in which they were strangers. And I have also heard the groaning of the children of Israel, whom the Egyptians keep in bondage. And I have remembered my covenant. It's quite a mouthful there. The patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, you know, your fathers that you're always talking about, knew God as Elohim. They hadn't heard the other names. The point is, God's nature in all of these names is that he keeps his promises. And as the Almighty, he's also their provider. So God again states to Moses, I'm the God of your fathers, I keep my promises. The promise or covenant that I'll give them, the land that I promised to them, I'm going to keep that. Even though they're in Egypt, I'm going to keep my promise. I'm going to bring them out. I see their bondage, I'm going to deliver them. And so Moses has been reminded, and now he's going to tell Moses to tell the people. Verse 6. Therefore say to the children of Israel, I am the Jehovah. I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. I will rescue you from their bondage, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great judgments. I will take you as my people, and I will be your Elohim. Then you shall know that I am the I am, Jehovah, your Elohim. Anybody getting confused? Sorry about that. I didn't write it. Someone else wrote all this. Who brings you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. And I will bring you into the land which I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I will give it to you as a heritage. I am the I am. So Moses spoke thus to the children of Israel, but they did not heed Moses because of the anguish of spirit and cruel bondage. Remember before they bowed and, oh, this is so cool. But now when the trouble came, it's just too much. Now, what God just said is, I'm going to deliver you. Did you see anything in there that says, I'm going to deliver you if you will? No. I made the agreement. I'm keeping my promise. I'm going to get you out of here. Whether you believe or not, I'm here to deliver you. And he's going to redeem them or rescue them by means of great judgments. And he's going to take them as his special people. And they're going to know as a result that he is Elohim and the I am. And he's going to bring them into the promised land. Now, anguish of spirit, as it says in New King James, in Hebrew is gosurah, which means literally shortness of breath. We translate it anguish of spirit. In Greek, spirit is pneuma, right? Shortness of breath. So if you think about it, they're so oppressed that they couldn't breathe. Have you ever seen a young child sobbing so much they can hardly breathe? It's that type of a situation. We are just so oppressed. We can hardly breathe. Moses, you're telling us all this great stuff, but we're wiped out. We just have trouble understanding it. So, verse 10. He's spoken to Moses, and he said, go tell the people this. They're having trouble believing because they just can't breathe. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, go in, tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to let the children of Israel go out of this land. Go back, Moses, do it again. Verse 12, and Moses spoke to the Lord, saying, yeah, but the children of Israel have not heeded me. How then shall Pharaoh heed me? For I am of uncircumcised lips. I understand his yeah, but. You know what? I'd probably do the same thing. It's sad when we don't trust God. And here we have a celebrity, Moses. He's having trouble trusting God. This uncircumcised lips thing, isn't that interesting? That was new to me when I studied this time. And so there's another place where we have an uncircumcised something. Jeremiah 6:10. To whom shall I speak and give warning that they may hear? Remember, Nebuchadnezzar was going to come and take away Jerusalem, destroy Jerusalem, take away the southern tribes. Babylonian Empire was going to come and haul them away. And Jeremiah is there to warn them. Whom shall I speak and give warning that they may hear? Indeed, their ear is uncircumcised, and they cannot give heed. Behold, the word of the Lord is a reproach to them. They have no delight in it. So their ears were not fit for receiving God's word. They were uncircumcised, you could say. They're only thinking in the flesh. They're not thinking in the spirit. And so here Moses is saying, I have uncircumcised lips. My lips are not. He's raising an objection. It's like another yeah, but. Lord, my lips are not sufficient to communicate your words. Who made your mouth? Well, yeah, but they're uncircumcised. Now, at chapter 13, we have a total change in the historical narrative. The stage has been set. Moses has asked Pharaoh, and Pharaoh's refused God. The oppression increased, and God's saying, go back to him, ask him again, and I'm going to start doing the plagues. Verse 13, then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron and gave them a command for the children of Israel and for Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to bring the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. This is like a global statement. God has said, bring them out. Israel, come out. Pharaoh, let them go. Moses, get this done. Global statement. Verse 14, these are the heads of the fathers' houses. Did we change subjects? Are we going, what are you doing, writer? What he's doing is saying, before I move on and give the account of the dramatic events, I want to make it clear to the audience or to the reader which Moses and which Aaron we're talking about. We have to absolutely substantiate who these guys are. So he's going to do a little genealogy here. And we'll go through it quickly. Verse 14, these are the heads of their fathers' houses. The sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, were Hanok, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. These are the families of Reuben. And the sons of Simeon were Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Jachin, Zohar, and Shaul, the son of a Canaanite woman. These are the families of Simeon. These are the names of the sons of Levi, according to their generations, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. And the years of the life of Levi were 137. The sons of Gershon were Libni and Shimi, according to their families. And the sons of Kohath were Amram, Izhar, Hebron, and Uzziel. And the years of the life of Kohath were 133. The sons of Merari were Mahli and Mushi. These are the families of Levi according to their generations. You got that memorized? I'm going to test you. So Moses and Aaron were Levites, sons of Levi. In Hebrew fashion, the writer recognizes the two older brothers in order to get to Levi, who he wants to talk about. Reuben and Simeon, they don't really pertain to what we're going to be studying. Now, Levi moved to Egypt in about 1876, we think. He had three sons, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. Kohath, the middle son, had four sons, Amram, Izhar, Hebron, and Uzziel. Amram, the oldest, had two sons and a daughter, Aaron, Moses, and Miriam. So there we have the genealogy, getting to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. Verse 20, now Amram took for himself Jochebed, his father's sister, as wife, and she bore him Aaron and Moses. And the years of the life of Amram were 137. So there's Moses' immediate family. Now for the uncles. The sons of Izhar, Moses' uncle, were Korah, Nepheg, and Zikri. Now I noticed Korah because I like that story. We're going to see him again in Numbers chapter 16. And he was a problem guy. He came to Moses and Aaron and said, you guys take too much on yourselves. How come we can't be priests too? And that's where Moses said, okay, let's put your rods in the tabernacle and we'll see. God will tell us who is going to be his priest. And Aaron's rod budded. And Korah and all his family and household goods, the earth opened up and they got swallowed up, and as proof that you can take it with you, because he did take it with him. But we'll get to that in Numbers. And the sons of Uzziel, Moses' other uncle, were Mishael, Elzaphan, and Zithru. Now for the grandkids and kids. Aaron, Moses' brother, took to himself Elsheba, daughter of Aminadab, sister of Nashon, as wife. And she bore him Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. And the sons of Korah, Moses' cousin, were Asher, Elkanah, and I can't say this stuff, Abisaph, I guess it would be. These are the families of the Korhites. By the way, some of the Korhites wrote some of the Psalms, so they still stayed involved in ministry. Verse 25, Eleazar, Aaron's son, and Moses' nephew, took for himself one of the daughters of Petuel, his wife, and she bore him Phinehas. These are the heads. I didn't look. Isn't Phinehas the guy that threw the spear? I think that was the guy. He was mad because the guy had brought the harlot into his tent of the other god, and he got so mad he ran in and threw the spear and went through both of them. And God liked his zeal. I think that was the guy. No, is that the guy? Do you remember? He's nodding, he thinks, and then he's laughing at me. These are the heads of the fathers' houses of the Levites according to their families. So the writer's given us a quick rundown of the genealogy and the leaders of the tribes of Levi. And he concludes in verse 26, these are the same Aaron and Moses to whom the Lord said, bring out the children of Israel from the land of Egypt according to their armies. These are the ones who spoke to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to bring out the children of Israel from Egypt. These are the same Moses and Aaron. I think we understand that paragraph. These are those two. The actions, let's go back to the historical narrative now. Verse 28. And it came to pass on the day the Lord spoke to Moses in the land of Egypt, that the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, I am the Lord. Speak to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, all that I say to you. But Moses said before the Lord, behold, I am of uncircumcised lips, and how shall Pharaoh heed me? So we're revisiting verses 10 through 12. We picked it back up. It's like we're watching TV and we jump back to that other scene again. Chapter 7. So the Lord said to Moses, see, I have made you as a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron your brother shall be your prophet. You shall speak all that I command you, and Aaron your brother shall tell Pharaoh to send the children of Israel out of this land. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart and multiply my signs and my wonders in the land of Egypt. But Pharaoh will not heed you, so that I may lay my hand on Egypt and bring my armies and my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great judgments. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I stretch out my hand on Egypt and bring out the children of Israel from among them. God commands Moses to obey. You shall speak all that I command you. And then he tells him that he's empowered him. I've made you as a god, and Aaron your brother shall be your prophet. It could be that because of the plagues, Moses will seem like a god to Pharaoh. It doesn't seem like Pharaoh recognizes Moses like a god because he keeps saying no to him. In any case, great respect is created between Pharaoh and Moses because of God. God is lifting Moses up in Pharaoh's eyes. And it's not because of Moses' awesome performance. It's because of God's performance. Aaron shall be your prophet. A prophet is someone that speaks for someone else. Prophets speak for God. Aaron's going to be speaking for Moses. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart and multiply my signs and wonders, but Pharaoh will not heed you. So he's foretelling that Pharaoh's going to resist. But God's going to work that resistance for good. Because what's the ultimate goal? The Israelites recognize God as their God, and even the Egyptians are going to go, that's the real God. God is glorified no matter what happens, because God's in control here. Verse 6, then Moses and Aaron did so, just as the Lord commanded them. Way to go, guys. So they did. And Moses was 80 years old, and Aaron was 83 years old when they spoke to Pharaoh. What did the writer just do for us? He gave us a timestamp. Cool. This is real history. He's given us information that lends credibility to it. These guys are 80 years old. And just think of it. It only took God 80 years to prepare Moses for ministry. Noah, who's visiting us back in the back, maybe some of you have met him. He's visiting from Calvary Bible Institute. You only got 60 years to go, Noah. You'll be ready. In verse 8, we have the detail of this second meeting with Pharaoh. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, when Pharaoh speaks to you, saying, show a miracle for yourselves, then you shall say to Aaron, take your rod and cast it before Pharaoh, and let it become a serpent. Remember, this is that first sign that God told Moses to do when he met him on the mountain. I'm going to give you these signs that you're going to show them. So Moses and Aaron went into Pharaoh, and they did so, just as the Lord commanded. And Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent. Remember, Moses ran from the serpent when he cast down his rod. The thing I notice here, though, is it's not Moses casting the rod down, it's Aaron. If you watch Charlton Heston, he casts his rod down, doesn't he? But remember, Moses said, I can't speak. All right, I'll give you Aaron. So Aaron is speaking on behalf of Moses as that prophet for Moses. Verse 11, but Pharaoh also called the wise men and the sorcerers, so the magicians of Egypt, they also did in like manner with their enchantments. For every man threw down his rod, and they became serpents. Well, they're not working with God. How could they do this? And by the way, in 2 Timothy 3:8, Paul tells us that this might have been, their names might have been Jannes and Jambres, because they resisted Moses. Who cares? But how did they do this? How did their rods turn into serpents? Probably a satanic counterfeit. Listen to 2 Thessalonians 2:9. Timothy, I think. Second, forget, it's one of those. I put TH. I think it's Timothy. The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders. Satan is able to counterfeit miracles. And that's got to be what's going on here. Counterfeiting this miracle. So how is God going to show that those are counterfeits and his is real? He's got to do something. Oh, but Aaron's rods swallowed up their rods. And Pharaoh's heart grew hard, and he did not heed them, as the Lord had said. Throw them down as snakes, and Aaron swallows them up, the bad ones. The result, verse 13, and Pharaoh's heart grew hard, because he said, you did a miracle, but my guys did the same thing. Apparently he didn't notice them getting swallowed up. But he's looking for a way to not believe. There's a pretty fantastic sign, but I'm choosing to not believe. And his heart grows harder. He wasn't convinced. He rejects God once more. Now in verse 14, we begin with the 10 plagues upon Egypt. Water to blood, frogs, gnats, flies, death of livestock, boils, hail, locusts, darkness, and then death of the firstborn. We'll tackle the plagues next time. I want to do a real look at some of the meanings of the plagues. But I want to notice today for application, the lost hope of the people. They believed for a while. But when the hardship came, I don't know, is God really going to deliver us? I don't know. They were hoping for deliverance. In the Old Testament, isn't that the mindset? We're hoping for salvation. We're hoping that God will accept me. We have the promise of deliverance. In the New Testament, we're not looking forward, hoping. We're looking backward, rejoicing over our deliverance. John 16:33. These things I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, like those Egyptians that were like the Israelites that were in Egypt. Egypt represents the world. They had tribulation. But be of good cheer. I have, past tense, overcome the world. 1 John 5:4. For whatever is born of God overcomes the world. And this is the victory that has overcome the world, our faith. So Jesus has already delivered us. We're still in Egypt. We're waiting to go home. He's already delivered us. He's already paid the price. He's already arranged for our freedom. We just haven't gotten on the airplane yet to leave. And we will suffer oppression while we're still here. But since we know we're delivered, we can be joyful. We can glory. We can rejoice in our oppression, which seems absolutely crazy. Romans chapter 5. And not only that, but we also glory in tribulations, knowing that tribulation produces perseverance, and perseverance character, and character hope. James 1:2, which we studied a while ago. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials. You guys doing that? Oh boy, another trial. Knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. I want a strong walk with the Lord. So the trial is worth it, because what comes out of that is I'm stronger in the Lord. Philippians 4:6-7. Be anxious for nothing. Anybody anxious today? You know who really said be anxious for nothing a lot was David, who wrote all those Psalms expressing his anxiousness. Be anxious for nothing, but instead, in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And then the result, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Jesus Christ. Make your request known, trust him, and he's going to give you peace that seems illogical. And so I look at the Israelites, they didn't have what we have. And they were being oppressed. Oh, I can't even breathe. I'm so oppressed. Okay, Moses, if you can do it, great, but I can't even focus on you. I can't even heed you. I am so wiped out. But we have knowledge, a broader knowledge of God's plan. We are reconciled to him. We are delivered. Who cares what happens to this old creaky body that's knees hurt and all that stuff? I've got a new body coming, and I've got eternity with God in just paradise. It changes our perspective. And when we truly understand that perspective, the outcome can be peace that passes understanding as we go through trials and hard times. I just got that peace in there. I know God's going to take care of this. I got cancer. I know God's going to take care of it. I lost my job. I know God's going to take care of it. Whatever it is, we can have that peace.